We are docked in Nuuk and there is an iceberg right in front of the ship. We're going to see how this turns out. Yesterday afternoon as we were sailing, the water was beginning to get kind of rocky, but the stabilizers were working great. We did see icebergs in the water. Here is a papa iceberg, and then following several paces behind, a baby iceberg. I don't want to be that close to either one of these icebergs in this ship though. The waters did get even rockier throughout the night, and we were rocking and rolling as we tried to sleep. They had hung out the seasick bags on the stairwells, and that's always a good indication that the captain is expecting some rough weather, and you may want to take your precautions with making sure you have on the patch you're supposed to have on, or take your Bonine or Dramamine, or chew your ginger, whatever you do to prepare for seasickness if you're susceptible. We are sailing into Nuuk, Greenland. It's not the port we were originally scheduled to go to. It is a new one because of icebergs. So let's go see what it looks like at the sail-in. We are getting closer to where we will be docking in Nuuk. You can see the shipping containers and all of the fog and cloudy skies. The wind is brutal, and it is cold out here right now. I decided to come inside and look at the stateroom television for the view out of the bow of the ship. And it looks like there's an iceberg where the waterways fork left and right. There's an iceberg in the path on the right. So maybe I do need to go back outside and see if I can find that iceberg from my balcony. My view from the balcony window here in Nuuk as we are docking, cloudy and overcast. The captain says it should clear up around noon, so we'll check this view out again a little later in the day. Let's go check over on the port side and see what's going on. Remember that iceberg I showed you at the beginning of the video? Well, let's go and look and see a little more about that iceberg. But before we do, let me ask you to subscribe to my videos. If you find them to be informative or entertaining in any way, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to let YouTube know that they need to start paying me for making these videos instead of just using my videos to put ads on their own. So if you'll subscribe, that'll help me out. And now back to the iceberg. The iceberg started out to our right, and it kept drifting closer and closer until it became right in front of the ship. It was enjoyable watching the bow camera. Various crew members would come out to get a close look. They would take their pictures of each other, and it stayed right in front of the ship for quite a while. Then it'd start moving back and forth. We never knew exactly where it was going to be, but it was time to start getting ready for my excursion, so we'll just find out where it is when I get back. I'm ready to go out to Nuuk, Greenland, and I am prepared because it is windy and cloudy and rainy and drizzly and cold out there. So let me just kind of give you a little fashion statement of what I'm doing. I have my beanie cap that fits closely, covers my ears. If I need extra protection, I have my hooded sweatshirt on underneath my coat, so I can pull that up much closer around my ears and neck. I have my Land's End jacket, which is water resistant, and it does a really good job, and it covers me well down below my hips. Now under my jacket I have multiple layers. I have my hooded sweatshirt, and under my hooded sweatshirt I have a long sleeve shirt and a short sleeve shirt. I also am wearing my waterproof rain pants over my blue jeans. And I have my waterproof hiking shoes. I think I'm prepared for my day in Greenland. The good thing is I can peel off layers as the sun comes out, because the captain said the sun should come out a little later today. I may not want all this layering. I also have my gloves ready, and I also have my waterproof purse. I'll show those to you. These are my gloves. This is the kind that where the fingertips can still work the camera. That's very important when I'm wanting to take videos and pictures, that I can still use my camera but keep my hands warm. And the purse that I have is this Travel-On waterproof purse as well. And it has several pockets. It's a great little travel purse. It's supposed to be pickpocket resistant, although I don't think I'm having to worry about that with Greenland because it has locking zippers all over the pockets. Then I can take a backpack and peel off layers and put them in my backpack while I'm walking around if I need to. This is a short tour. I don't think I'm going to just take my backpack because I think it's going to be chilly enough that I'll be able to make it while we're gone without having to worry about peeling off those layers. So let me tell you about my experience in town. When we arrived, it was cold and wet and miserable, so we had an excursion that was booked. It's supposed to be a short walk around the town and then coffee with a local family. And we had a similar excursion booked for Kakatoak, but when our itinerary was changed and we had to skip the port in Kakatoak, the port of Nuuk was given instead. Now, Nuuk is the capital of Greenland, so we knew it was going to be a larger city, potentially more things to do. The ship offered another excursion similar, was a short walk around the town and then coffee with a local family. So sure enough, we got ready and got off the ship. However, there was quite a delay. The ship had a medical emergency. Ambulances were waiting at the bottom of the gangway, waiting to take someone to the hospital. So that delayed things. Then one of the workers from the dock told me that evidently the first gangway didn't fit. That seems odd. It didn't fit. They took it away. They brought out their own gangway and it was fine. So we were quite delayed getting off of the ship. We were supposed to meet at the pier at 11. We weren't even in line to get off of the ship till 11:15. Everyone was antsy. There were people waiting in the stairwells. There were people waiting in the halls. Everything was packed. Elevator doors would open and there was nowhere for those people to go, but they would just crowd right into everybody else. People were getting angry. Some had stood on those stairs already for an hour waiting to be allowed to get off of the ship. I was a little fearful that it was going to be a trampling going on as soon as they did finally allow it. And then when we get up there, there's only one person scanning everybody's card to get off the ship. You would think they would at least have two people scanning cards, possibly two gangways, maybe one for ship excursions and one for people getting off. But no, one gangway, one person. The good thing is it was a ship excursion. So when we got off the ship, those shore excursion workers were bundled up and getting rained on and saying 11 o'clock tour, 11 o'clock tour. And we got on a van and we were able to stay warm and dry inside the van as we waited for everybody else that had booked the tour to get there with us. And then we were off. And our guide introduced himself, said he was 18 years old and it was his first time to do a tour. And that was about the last thing he said. We drove out of the immediate port area, turning left, and saw lots of shipping containers. This is more of an industrial port. Several people did choose to walk, turning left out of the port area and walking up the hill. We saw multiple businesses, I assume, but none of them were labeled in English. So I'm not really sure what a lot of these businesses are. There were apartment buildings that we passed, and we went around a traffic circle, and the streets were labeled pretty well. If you knew where you were going, I think you would be able to drive pretty well in this country. We turned into a very picturesque part of Nuuk, and this is where we would unload the vans and start walking around. Our driver knew better English, and driver kind of told us more things than the tour guide did. Then when we got out of our van, we met some of the others in one of the other vans, and they had a tour guide, a young girl, didn't look to be any older than the other guy, and she would walk and we were following her and she would talk, but she was never facing the group. So finally I said, "Excuse me, miss, can you turn around and speak to us because we can't hear you?" And she looked a little embarrassed, but she turned around, but she was doing the best she could, and she would point out things. She said that the yellow building used to be a hospital and now it is a school. She showed us the museum, pointed out a couple of statues and said who they were, but no real story behind it. She had difficulty getting that across, but it was still an enjoyable trip. They did the best they could, and we saw some of the harbor area of Nuuk. Then we all loaded the vans back up and we drove to a local family's home. And I don't know, in my mind I was thinking it'd probably be one of those little houses, one of those cute little red houses that we were having in a family. The ticket even said you may not all be able to get a seat, some people may have to stand, but we entered an apartment building. Not exactly what I expected, but it was great. So we had a little bit of a local experience of someone that lived in one of the apartments, and they had a very nice apartment. The man and woman spoke very little English, but she had baked and prepared for us. And we had cookies and little cakes. She had coffee for those that wanted it. She had a hot tea made with that rhubarb, and she had a cold water with infused rhubarb in it. Delightful experience. We got to see some of the local culture through her decor. She had a little collection of beadwork that she had from gifts that were given to her, and she showed us some of the local costumes that from the old days that you would wear. Just a delightful little visit in her home. And then it was time to come back, and we were dropped right back off at the pier. Now, while I was at the pier, I decided to take a look at that information center I saw earlier. They were offering some tours, some fjord tours and sightseeing tours in there that you could book while you're here, and several souvenirs. But there were 2 vendors in that souvenir shop sharing the space. There were also some tours I noticed outside, some type of an open air vehicle that gave an 1.5-hour tour. So there were some things that you could do in port once you got to port if you had not planned something ahead and if that space was still available. Our ship, on the other hand, was charging $20 per person to take you into town. The currency in Greenland is the kroner. The Danish kroner. The smallest bill is the 50. Then it has coins of 20, 10, 5, 2, and 1. I used some kroner to purchase a postcard and purchase the scene exactly where we were today, with the yellow building and the church and the monument on top. And I also purchased my Greenland ornament for my Christmas tree. When I got back to my cabin, I decided to go out on the balcony to get a new video after the skies had cleared. Now I have much more clarity. The scenery is really pretty, and while I was enjoying the view, I had an unexpected treat. The King of Denmark was in the country for his first official visit as king, and it was a special surprise to see his royal yacht sail right by our ship. My husband booked an entirely different tour. He booked a boat tour of the fjords through the cruise line. They boarded boats in groups of 5 or 8, depending on the capacity of the boat. Fortunately, the wind had calmed down from early this morning, but they still bounced around quite a bit. They saw amazing scenery, pretty waterfalls, and got up close and personal with some icebergs. This is Shirley with Shirley's Journeys, and I hope all of your journeys are pleasant ones.